Hey everybody, I'm Reggie Williams, founder and CEO of Ambrosia for Heads, and with me I have
Hey
Jake
man,
Payne.
your camera went off to a very funny avatar.
And I'm starting.
Now I realize. Oh shit. Okay, that's funny. As you were. All right, I like it.
I'm starting off the day with egg on my face.
There we
For
go.
reasons we're gonna get into. And Jake Payne, ruined the gag almost, but
Oh
yeah,
man.
man. Let's get into it though, dude.
Yeah, man. It's Mother's Day weekend, so I'm gonna tell you what my mom always used to tell me.
What's that?
When you're ready to apologize, I'm ready to listen.
So last week, Jake and I had an exchange. We talked about a tweet that was sent out by TDE's top dog, saying that the wait was over and a big drop was coming on May 7th. Now, I'd say 95% of the world believed that this was related to Kendrick Lamar. We've been waiting for 4 years for Kendrick's album. There's been a lot of chatter about the album being done, music videos, and all that other stuff. And, Jake, who's always been the one to be more cautious about these kind of things and not fall for the okey doke, was like, you know what? I think it's going to be Isaiah Rashad or SZA. I said, I think that would be clickbait. I truly thought it would be clickbait. And he said, okay, cool. And so we bet our typical wage, which is a drink. And I think that I've won my fair share of drinks over the years.
Probably one more than me. Yeah.
But I wanted to raise the stakes a little bit. And so I said, you know what? If you win, I will come. I will have with literally with egg on my face. And so, hence the beginning there.
I like that. Yeah.
So on Friday we didn't get Kendrick. We got Thursday. We got Isaiah Rashad. And the song is called what's it called again? Do you remember what the song's called?
It's funny. No, I'm gonna tell you right now. It is called. Oh goodness gracious.
Last something, right? Like
I thought I had it in our document, but
yeah, you did. I'm not
and
sure what
it's
happened to it, but oh, there it is. Lay with you,
yep.
with featuring Duke Deuce. Based on the fact that neither one of us remember the name of the song,
Yeah.
I'm guessing that it wasn't your cup of tea.
I think Isaiah Rashad is a really interesting artist because, like, I think in order to succeed today, you have to win in at least two games. And I think Isaiah is, and this is true of Q. I mean, Kendrick hits all the buckets, but Isaiah, can hit you with the spiritual, lyrical, miracle rap, but he can also just kind of hit you with a vibe. And I think that this was more of the latter. I like the beat a lot. I think after waiting so long for new Isaiah Rashad music, I don't know that this delivered to the MC that I particularly gravitate towards. But I don't think it's a bad song in any way, shape, or form. I just thought that, there's certainly better this week and better in Rashad's catalog too. What did you think?
Yeah, it wasn't my thing. You know, it's interesting because J Rock, obviously one of my favorite artists on TDE. He's the guy who got me into TDE, into Kendrick, into the whole wave. And when he released his song "When" back in 2018, I think it was 2018,
Mhm.
2019. At first, I didn't like it, but then after a few more listens, it became one of my favorite songs of the year, and it's still one of my favorite TDE songs, one of my J Rock songs. But it kind of built on that sound that they started to craft over the Black Panther soundtrack.
Mhm.
It was the first time that I heard TDE, and it sounded to me like they were riding a trend more than setting the trend. And I guess Kendrick kind of built on that too, with Dan, with the Mike Will produced songs like Humble and DNA. But
Mhm.
still, they put their own spin on it, on kind of a current sound, and made it their own. And that's how I felt about J Rock. So this one, I think, is Isaiah doing something similar, but going even deeper into the current sound, and I think deviating from the kind of flow and cadence that he typically uses, which for me, it's very simplistic and not really my thing, you know. And
Hmm.
this isn't one that I've listened to it 3 times now, and it's very hard for me to think that I will get into it, you know, later on. But we'll see, you know.
Yeah, I feel you on that. I did some, some content work and consulting work with Hollywood Cole, who's the song's producer, and he's somebody who's working a lot with TDE, and told me, when we spoke, I guess early this year, late last year, that he had some things in the chamber. And one of the things I like about him, and this is one of the first joints that we've gotten from him with TDE, is that there's samples involved. There's vocal samples, and it's a different sound than we've gotten before. But yeah, I played the song about 3 or 4 times this week. I keep a playlist of things that I really really like from every year, and I can say this one didn't make that list, but it could grow on me. Win was a great example. When that came out, I think you and I together, the narrative we ran with was, kind of J Rock breaking his silence at the time. And then we both came around on the song "You Far More Than Me," and it gave J Rock his first Grammy. So TDE, like a lot of great artists right now, things can absolutely grow on you.
Yeah. You know, so when the news started breaking on Thursday, the 6th, that it was going to be Isaiah, I got to admit, I was disappointed. I still held out a little bit of hope. You know, it's kind of like when I found out there was no Santa Claus, I still held on to the Easter Bunny and the Tooth
Yeah,
Fairy for a minute, you know.
yeah.
But I knew there was no Kendrick album coming. And I got to say, man, I've been looking forward to it all week. You know, it's been so long. I'm craving Kendrick's voice and hearing what his new message is going to be in sound and all that stuff so much that it was a bit of a letdown. And then to get that song was even more so because I do really like Isaiah. You know,
Hmm.
the Sun's tirade I thought was phenomenal. The Sylvia demo was phenomenal. Like I really think he's a talented artist, and I've still got high hopes for his album. You know, I
Hmm.
think that hearing it in its totality will probably even make this song sound different, as is often the case. Um, but then on Friday, or actually, yeah, on Friday, we got some other news, or actually later that day, we got some news that kind of like softened the blow for me. And that was that J. Cole is releasing his album for certain on Friday the 14th, The Fall Off. This is an album he's teased.
Correct you. The off season.
So sorry, the off season, the off season. This has been an album he's teased since KOD. He teased that, and then the fall off, and it was I think initially supposed to come out that same year as KOD did, but now we're like 2 years, 2 3 years later. Um, that I thought was phenomenal news. What did you think when you heard about the Cole news?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely raises the question of, like, and this is, I'm sure, reading the tea leaves too much, but we all speak as hip hop fans about kind of this spoken and unspoken rivalry between TDE and Dreamville, these two labels very capable of taking, talented, MCs and singers and turning them into stars. We've seen that over, especially the last 5 years, but even further back. So in a way, like, TDE doesn't deliver what you say 80% of the world kind of expected. Boom, in comes Dreamville and delivers a song from their flagship artist and founder. I thought that was really interesting, and I definitely think it raised the stakes on 2021.
Yeah, and he then released a song called Interlude. He had said he was going to drop the whole body of work at once, but decided, last minute to release a song, the Interlude. First of all, do you think that that was always planned, or you think he just did change his mind?
Well, so it didn't happen at midnight. It happened at about 10 a.m. East Coast on Friday, which I thought was really interesting. So that leads me to speculate, and it's just speculate, that he did that. And again, it's kind of like, did TDE leave the net open? Not that Isaiah Rashad isn't a great artist or delivered a cool song, but everybody was like expecting this thing, and I think it was one of the first weeks of the year where a large portion of the rap listing community stayed up to see what would happen, and then Cole kind of like puts one in the net. So I do think it was on the fly, and I think it was an interesting song because it most certainly isn't a single. Like, I don't know, I would be very shocked if we get a video for this on its own. It might be combined in with something else, but it's yeah, I mean, what did you think of the record itself?
Yeah, Similar. I didn't think that the record itself didn't grab me all that much. You know, after hearing Cole go on a tear for 2 years of just destroying features, every feature he was on, it seemed like he was on a mission to prove that he was the best rapper in the game. It was a much more relaxed flow. The beat was didn't really grab me all that much, but I like the content a lot. You know, there's a lot of like subtle commentary and sometimes not so subtle commentary about like the violence that's occurred against Black people, both at the hands of the police, but you know also at our own hands. You know, and so it sounds like it was a setup for me for what we can expect this album to bring. Which and I'm very excited about that. You know, Cole has been an activist for years.
Yeah.
He's been one of those guys since Michael Brown, like in the streets, riding, walking with the people, like not the guy on the platform, but the guy very much in the crowd, like you know, walking the walk. And so, and his music has addressed that too. So I'm really looking forward to hearing what he has to say about things.
Yeah, I agree with everything that you said, and Cole absolutely walks it like he talks it. And we're living in an age I wouldn't say any more than Kendrick does. I think Kendrick has been active in protests and things like that, but these are guys that stand for what they talk about. And yeah, I hope that that is the commentary we get on this album because you know Cole's last full length body of work, KOD, addressed a ton of things, most notably, you know, drug addiction and just kind of the messages that are being, you know, decimated around, you know, especially young people through a lot of rap music. And so to hear what he has to say in, you know, I won't say post pandemic, but in a 2021 world has my attention. And I really liked I thought it was very provocative and interesting. You know, Cole has this ability to say things that are right under our nose that we don't realize, but he compared the deaths of Pimp C and Nipsey Hussle at 33 to, you know, Jesus Christ, who died at 33. And I thought that that was really interesting. And for me, I didn't even realize that Nip or Chad Butler was that age when they passed. Like it wasn't something that I stuck with. And I just Cole has that ability to just kind of really, you know, say big things. And one other point I'll make is, you know, you say on a Terra features, this song to me almost felt like a J. Cole feature. You know, it really is one verse. I think it's far more than 16 bars though. But he talks a little bit at the beginning of the song and then just spits. And it's not, you know, there's no chorus, there's none of that. I thought it was a really um just interesting concept that reminded me of what he's done with, you know, 21 Savage, on and on and on, all of those kind of Rhapsody, all of these great features.
Yeah, you know, and he dropped the cover art too. And the cover art is him standing on a basketball court at night with a basketball goal on fire behind him, and he's got on an all black kind of like you know it's a sweatshirt looks like, and then black pants too. Um, Dude, I think there's a lot of subs here. I think there's a lot of subs here. So first of all, the basketball court, the goal on fire looks like a burning cross, you
Mm.
know, and um, it's very purposeful that the flames are going straight up and then kind of out, not fully like as a T, but they kind of go out a little bit, almost like a burning cross would. His all black is the opposite of like a white robe, but you know, given some of the references
Hmm.
he has in the song to black on black violence, I'm wondering if this is a metaphor for us killing ourselves instead of like having other people do it.
I mean, that's you raise interesting questions, and I hope we get the answer. I mean, one of the songs that Cole has dropped between KOD and today with the interlude was, you know, Middle Child. And, you know, between the video and the song itself, there was as much, you know, figurative language, metaphor, and imagery in that as you're going to get. And, you know, we actually, one of our more successful articles was breaking down all the hidden meanings within that song and video. And yeah, I mean, Cole is that kind of artist where there's a lot of Easter eggs. Cole and Kendrick both do that in very different ways. And cover art is always going to be an extension of that. So I think you might be on the ground floor with something.
Yeah, so we're definitely getting Cole next week. Drake's Certified Lover Boy is coming in 2021. He's told us, you know, probably sometime this summer. I think we're getting Kendrick this year. What do you think?
Yeah, and I think, even though you got Egg Foo Young on your face today, I think you made a really compelling case as to why. In our last episode, I venture to bet all three of those artists are absolutely happening.
And then Travis Scott just announced he has a festival that's happening in November. It's sold out within an hour, I believe.
Mm.
150,000 people, fastest selling um, festival for an artist-led festival ever.
Wow, is it in
Biggest.
Houston?
It's in Houston,
Okay.
and I think it's called Astro World. I can't remember, but that's coming in November, and I believe he's confirmed an album coming out this year also. So we have albums coming by Travis, J. Cole, Kendrick, and Drake this year, most likely.
Hmm.
I said earlier in the week, I think that's the equivalent to 1994 in terms of like, artists at the top of their game in a generation dropping albums in the same year. And you had some issues with that. So I want to break it down. So
Okay.
I want to establish what I mean first. So
Yeah.
we're arguing about the same thing. So when you take those, first of all, I'm talking about artists that kind of came of age, that came to the forefront in the last decade. So each of those artists really kind of broke 2010. Drake, you can say 2009. That's when it's So Far Gone mixtape came out,
Hmm.
but he really kind of came into his own, 2010 or so. Um, J. Cole, same thing with the warm up. I think it was like 2009, but again, the 2000 teens were his decade. Travis for sure. Kendrick, same thing. So coming of age that decade, I don't know that there's been any artist bigger than those four in that decade. I think that one you could argue is Future, but I would argue, but I would argue Future's not bigger than Drake, Cole, or Kendrick.
Yeah.
Um, and I would say that in the last couple of years, Travis Scott has surpassed him. Super Bowl appearance, McDonald's like partnership, Fortnite. Like I think Travis Scott is gigantic at this point. So, can you think of an artist bigger than those four from the last decade?
No, and I mean it's all four of these artists delivered great work consistently. I think on the earlier part of the decade, I think, Kendrick, Drake, and Cole kind of proved themselves and have done really interesting things from there. I think of the four, the mainstream is just getting familiar over the last 3 or 4 years with Travis. I think he was consistent before then, but in that more recently, he's climbed to superstar status.
What about Logic? Your guy.
No, I think that there's a fringe of artists that are near and close, and I would definitely say Big Sean and Logic are in that, possibly Two Chains. Because Two Chains, even though he was around with Player Circle the previous decade, I look at the 2010s of him kind of rebranding as a solo artist. But I don't think the three of them have been as consistent and on a constant climb. And I don't know that their album drops have been events in the way that the four you mentioned have.
Chance the Rapper.
Chance is close, but Chance had a misfire with his last album, in my opinion,
Yeah,
unlike we've seen with the other four.
yeah, big time, big
And
time.
Chance is, it's his game to come back to. But I also, yeah, and it's funny too because Chance, in many ways, was overexposed. A lot of folks took umbrage with him being this DIY independent artist, but also some of the doors that were automatically unlocking for him. And again, you mentioned all the things that Travis Scott has done. I believe this week he said he wasn't into marketing, and a lot of people were shocked at that, given again the collaborations with Fortnite, McDonald's, so on and so forth. But yeah, I think consistency counts for a lot, and that's why these four artists are in a class of their own. Even yeah, and again, another artist that I would put in that second tier is Crit, who I often feel doesn't get the mainstream recognition he deserves. I think he has the consistency, maybe not to the extent of the other four, but he's right there. And for a hip hop fan that goes off of the music, he's pretty close. But that four is an elite circle.
Yeah, and I'm gonna be clear. I'm not talking about like the quality of the artist or their music. You could put Rhapsody up there in terms of consistency and and quality. I'm talking about commercial right now, just cultural impact.
Yeah.
Kendrick with the Pulitzer. So over the last couple of years, each has gotten bigger. Kendrick had his Pulitzer. Damn is his biggest commercial album by far. It had entire like podcast devoted to it. Like it just was an album that I think put him in the stratosphere, and not only at the top of his class, but a lot of people have him in a GOAT discussion now, including myself.
It's
Um,
your point to make, but I want to just make sure I'm clear too. I do think quality matters when it comes to this argument, but it's not what the argument is entirely based on. But I don't think you get to be in that circle if you're not really consistent with quality music and projects.
Quality matters for sure. And I think all four of these artists are supremely talented, but I believe there are lots of artists who are supremely talented who don't have the same commercial stature these two have, these four have.
Okay, sure,
So in
sure.
this one, it's both quality and commercial, like promise. The Drake like has been on a 12-year run that we've never seen from any artist, period, like in any genre. Michael Jackson, Madonna, Katy Perry, I don't care who it is, Lady Gaga, nobody's been on this kind of run. I stand by that, and then the numbers will back me up on that for anybody who's like trying to hate on that. This has been his longest break between albums, so I think the anticipation is higher than usual. Cole KOD was his fastest selling album. It's one of the biggest albums that year. And like I said, he's gone on a run of features for the last 2 years where he's just destroyed everybody and just really had a chip on his shoulder. And then Travis, like we said, Astroworld, the festival, the album's triple platinum, second biggest selling album of that year. Super Bowl performance, controversial, but still, Fortnite, which is just won the Clio for, the having the most creativity, and I think it won a Webby as well,
Hmm.
and the McDonald's partnership, and he's got his cacti drink. Like he's just on a tear right now. He could end up being the biggest out of all four,
Hmm.
and super critical acclaim. So each of them, I think, is at his apex right now, also, and there's never been a year where all four of them have released a project at the same time. Now, I know what you're going to say. You can go back to 2016 and you're going to say that Travis has got, an album, his album,
Birds in the trap
Birds,
thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
Bird in the Trap, Sing McKnight. Drake had Views. Cole had For Your Eyes Only. Now, the wild card is Kendrick because he released Untitled and Mastered, but as we know, that it's just a compilation of outtakes from the two Pimp and Butterfly sessions. It wasn't like designed to be an album. It's something that Top kind of put out as a filler because Kendrick had been performing songs like on Colbert, on Austin City Limits, and a couple other places where he was just dropping these songs like out of nowhere, and people were like, "Yo, is this going to be released?" So he said, "Why not? We'll just do that." So I don't count that as an official Kendrick album. To me, that's just like a lost tape, so like B sides or whatever it might be. So intentional like body of work. There's never been a year where the four of them have put out an album together, and certainly, even if you count that year, none of them were at their peak powers or were at the status that they are now.
Hmm.
26, 2021 versions of these guys is way different than the 2016 versions. So you put that together, and this is a monster year for hip hop. I think it's the biggest year of the last 10 in terms of like slate of releases from rap's biggest superstars. And I can't see a year that eclipses it.
I support you in the last 10. But I think again, and this comes back into it, you can say that based on star power, going into it. It's a different argument after these albums are out and we see, how they're received. But that's also a different point. Where I debate you a bit is this idea of the changing of the guard, because I feel that all four of these artists, especially the first three, put
But wait, let's
Travis.
let's set that
Okay.
up because I
Okay.
talked about it in the document. We haven't
Okay.
talked about it here yet. So, um, let's talk about two things. One, let's talk about changing of the guard, and two, let's talk about comparing this year of these four superstars versus other years in which you had artists at the top of their game who were like, going to control a decade or so in the same year. So I mentioned changing of the guard. I think that, you know, there have been sea changes in hip hop where you had a new crop of players come in and establish themselves and say, this is my game now. Think about like, you know, post MJ retiring when Kobe kind of like established it as his game. And then, post Kobe when LeBron and D Wade and like, Kevin Durant and Steph Curry kind of established it as their game. Um, in hip hop, that happened in 1984 or so when Run DMC and LL Cool J came in and kind of took the reins from Curtis Blow and Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five and people like that. It happened again in 87, 88 when Rakim and KRS-One and EPMD and guys like that took the reins from Run DMC and LL. It happened again, I would say, in 93, 94 when you had Biggie and Snoop and Wu and Nas and guys like that kind of take the reins, and later on Jay-Z kind of joined that class. I'd say it happened again in 99, 2000 or so, 2001, where you had Eminem and then Kanye and then 50 Cent and people like that kind of take the reins from like the Jays and people like that. And then Jay continued, like he stayed as part of that class. Maybe 2007, 2008, really with Wayne and Ross, Kanye still in that class and so forth. And then I think the next crop came in like 2009, 2010 when this Crit, Cole, Kendrick, Logic, like all these guys came aboard.
Wale, yeah.
Yeah, Wale, but they were just young guns back then. They were kind of the guys, like they were rookies. They were coming in saying, look, we're going to have something to say about this. Outkast was back in that 2000 era too. But it wasn't until now where they all kind of like, now they're like the Avengers, right? So they came in, they had all the separate movies throughout, and now they're coming together, as fully fleshed out, like, rap superstars. And this is their Avengers moment. And I think this is signaling that this is truly uh, hip hop belongs to them at this point. No one else. Jay, he's had a great run. He's still good. He's still critically acclaimed. The whole nine. Kanye is kind of, doing fashion and is viewed more for his personality than for his music at this point. Ross is still consistent, but not where he was, 8, 9 years ago. Wayne, same thing. Like, I think this is clearly their game now. And it's like, what the NBA was like when Durant and Steph and all those guys kind of took it from like LeBron and Wade. I think this is that time. That's what I mean by changing the guard.
Yeah, I don't quite see it the same way. I see it as the guard has already changed again, especially with Kendrick, Cole, and Drake. I think now more than ever, Travis Scott has arrived, and what he does next it's at a crossroads of going up or, kind of, leveling out or whatever. And every indication is that he's on the rise for reasons you stated. I liken this more to maybe like a 2000, 2001, where you had those artists that you mentioned from 94, Nas with Stillmatic, Outkast with Stankonia, Jay-Z with Blueprint and Rock La Familia, getting to that point of what are you going to do now? And this is a great, it's like when there's, a playoffs in sports and there's a lot of good teams. There's not a clear cut front runner. And that's what interests me about the prospects of 2021 is that, this could be the year where Cole overtakes Kendrick, where Kendrick, makes a statement against Drake commercially or in terms of mainstream exposure, or Travis Scott coming through, like you said, and potentially outdoing all of them. But I don't see it as a changing of the guard simply because you can trace these guys back, in some cases more than 10 years.
When would you say the guard changed though, if not now?
Somewhere in the middle of the decade, right around 2015. I tend to believe that all of these guys put in, crucial benchmark work, 2011, 2012. I put Section 80 on a very high pedestal. But I think that by the time you get to Pimp a Butterfly, things really kind of cement themselves. And this isn't it shows that this is an artist that is growing in real time, evolving, and making really brilliant music. And I think you can use that model across the board. I think KOD with J. Cole, for as great as 2014 Forest Hills Drive was, Cole outdid himself, and he did it in a way that wasn't tailored to the commercial. Like he didn't chase hits with that. He made a really dense album of commentary, and it worked. Travis Scott, Astroworld is a universe, literally. And he made that work. Like the mainstream came to him with it, and he used his creativity to create all this extensions of that. So I think this is go time. I think this is that year when you have 4 phenomenal teams, and the history books may be forever changed by the choices they make creatively and the moves they make on the business tip with 2021. But I think the guard already changed.
So I'm gonna push back on that, and I'm gonna liken the period you just described as the equivalent of, say, 99 to 2002, 2003, the NBA. So
Mm-hmm.
MJ retires. There's a void. Everybody's looking for, who that next GOAT is going to be, and they don't get one. They get like instead like constant transition. You got the Spurs one year. You got you know uh, the the Lakers one year. You got like a bunch of different teams kind of vying for that, and there is no clear kind of heir apparent. It's not until 2003 or so when the Shaq and Kobe dynasty like is in full effect. But you got Tim Duncan, you got a couple others that are really like saying, okay, it's a new NBA now, and we're the leaders of the pack. I think that in that time that you just described, the 20, 14 to 20, like 18 or so, 2019 period, um, rap was defined by a sound. It was ATL. It was trap music. It was a lot of different players from like Uzi Vert to like Future to you name
Migos.
the yeah you Migos. You name the artist, right? It was more of a sound, and you had different people kind of dominating that sound at different times. But there wasn't like a clear and you also had those guys we mentioned like Cole, Drake, Kendrick, but not at any one, not together at the same time. Each one kind of had their years separately would make buzz and then like kind of trail off and go and do their thing. I think now with them coming together all at the same time, it's just a show of strength like never before, and it's just unquestionable that these guys are it. They're
Mm-hmm.
because everyone's talked about the lack of lyricism, lack of like artistry and stuff like that. These guys have consistently done it, and they've been around now for 10, 12 years. There's no argument anymore and they're the biggest selling artists too. Like it's just clear that this is the wave of hip hop, despite all the things that have come and gone before. Like I think it took time for them to kind of establish themselves. But what do you say to that?
I like that framing. I mean, I do. And I think that, at an artistic level, it's, Kendrick's game to lose. I think at a commercial, recognition level, it's Drake's game to lose. I think this is a really interesting season ahead for J. Cole and Travis Scott. And, and in a way that I don't think Big Sean or Wiz Khalifa or Wale or Aesop Rocky or Crit or Yellow Wolf or Bronson, and I can go on, in a way that those guys couldn't necessarily hang for reasons beyond just the quality of their music. This will be interesting, especially for those 2 guys. And none of these artists have ever disappointed me. I know some folks were a little bit off put by For Your Eyes Only when J. Cole dropped it in the closing days of 2016. I mean, that project gave us Neighbors, which I think is one of Cole's most brilliant, songs. I don't think these guys have ever truly disappointed their fan base, and um, it sets the table for a really exciting 2021. Because while you and I get on here most weeks and talk about some great new music in hip hop, I don't know that this album or that this year has an album that really sticks to your ribs the way that these guys seem very capable of delivering.
Yeah, so 5 years out, who do you put your money on in terms of these four as being the leader of the pack?
Huh. I I think that Kendrick will go down in history as the, certainly the greatest MC of the 2000s. I don't see that changing. And Drake is the Teflon Don, all respect due to Rick Ross and John Gotti. Like, Drake just can't lose, even when Pusha T's coming at him, even when, he's coming out with an album in 2021 called Certified Lover Boy with a heart cut into his hair. I mean, that's up there with Game's butterfly tattoo. And he's unquestionable. So I kind of think those two universes live at the same time. I'm not as good as you are with the basketball analogies, but I mean, those guys are already cemented Hall of Famers. I don't know that I see that changing, but if J. Cole or Travis can overtake either one of them, and I think that that's a great example too, because when KOD dropped, I believe it broke streaming records up to that time, but I think a lot of that in 2018 had to do with people going all in on streaming. I think that Cole and Kendrick have their own little kind of battle, and I think that Travis and Drake are competing at another level of just like who is the biggest, hip hop superstar, and the music that Travis makes isn't exclusively hip hop, in a way that Drake is versatile too with the singing and the rapping. So, man, I hope I didn't seem like I just dodged your question, but I think it's Drake and Kendrick's games to lose again.
Yeah, I've said this often that I think that Drake and Kendrick are rap's equivalent today of Michael and Prince. You know, a lot of people give
Mm,
Drake a lot of flack, but his hit making is just unparalleled and unquestionable. Like, even if you don't like the music he puts out, I think you have to give the respect to it. And I love his music. I'm a huge Drake fan. But Kendrick, on the artistic side, no one has ever said that Drake has put out the kind of artistic quality that Kendrick has. And I mean, the facts are there with the Pulitzer and things like that, and like the four straight Grammy nominations for rap album, or three straight for rap album of the year, or maybe four. And he should have won four, and he's got, I think, more Grammys than just about anybody at this point.
mhm.
Um, so that part's not questioned. I think Cole doesn't get his just due because he's been so consistent. His messaging has been equally substantive and important. I think as Drake's, he's more straightforward with it, which may discount him a little bit. We had that side conversation with Justin Hunt, aka Justin Payne, and I asked you guys like if Kendrick and Cole were Michael and Prince, um, who was J. Cole, and he had said Lionel Richie. I thought that was great because Lionel Richie had hit after hit after hit. Incredible writer, good voice, but it was never ever in that conversation. I don't even know who Travis Scott would be. He might be like Madonna or something like that. But
Yeah.
I think Travis could end up being. I think Travis would be more like Kanye, in that he's going to be known for. He's going to be bigger because of things outside of music than his music in the next 5 years.
Yeah, I'm curious to see if Travis's, fan base, which I believe leans the youngest of the three, Drake might be an exception to that. I wonder if they will hold on to him the way that, generations held on to Jay-Z or held on to Tupac or held on to Eminem. That'll be curious, to see. And, to your point about J. Cole as well, I think Drake, Drake hate is something that Drake knows how to lean into and kind of puppeteer. He has a lot of fun with it. I think J. Cole hate has been a real anomaly. And I love the fact that Cole confronted it head on with his conversation with Little Pump and stuff like that. But I feel like a lot of Travis Scott's fan base was brought up to believe that J. Cole was corny for reasons that will never make sense to me. And yet through that all, Cole endures, but I feel like he's had a tougher road than those other guys. I mean, Kendrick proved himself out of, kind of being a relative SoundCloud unknown. Cole came in as Jay-Z's groomed artist and still, got pushed back over that because there were people that were disappointed with that choice in his first album. And, Nas let me down, or I let Nas down. Like Cole's made a bunch of weird moves, but the fact that he's still endured and continues to level up is huge. And just to bring it full circle, by looking at interlude and looking at the possible symbolism and density of the off season, I'm tuned in. And I wonder how much, if Cole drops next week, if that's going to send Kendrick, Drake, and Travis back in the lab to adjust their messaging or their projects. We may never know.
That's an interesting question. And you brought it up earlier. You said that really the merit of this is going to depend on what their artistic choices are ultimately, like, and what the music sounds like. So, assuming that all four come out this year, and all four, let's say all four put out the best work of their careers. If all four of these artists put out the best work of their careers in the same year, do you think that this puts it on a level of like a 1994, where you've got, Ready to Die and Illmatic, and, Murder Was the Case, Southern Playalistic Cadillac Music,
Common,
Hard to
OC,
Earn,
yeah.
These are guys who were kind of at the top in Thug Life. Was not top his work, but like those four albums, Main Ingredient, you could throw in there too with Pete Rock and CL Smooth. Do you think it put in Resurrection by Common too? Do you think it puts it on the level of a year like that?
No, I mean, for reasons that we debated, I think that year was primarily breakout artists that were defining themselves and making really bold artistic and experimental choices. I think this is what, some people probably perceive as 2001. Again, your Stillmatic versus your Blueprint, where you have just artists that are at new levels doing battle. And I know that was a complicated year because there was literally, beef. But this one, I mean, there's a creative competition. So maybe this is a case like no other, where that's never happened before. Even with like an 88, those are artists figuring it out, guys on their first and second albums that were just putting out incredible work. This might be a year like no other in that way. And I think we're both saying the same thing, but looking at it slightly different.
So this might be like 2K, where you can put like the greatest eras of all time together.
Yeah,
in one game.
Okay. That's a dope analogy. Yeah.
Cool. So a couple more releases that came out this week were posthumous. So we got a new joint from Phife with Illa J called French Kiss 2, which to me sounded very much like Phife kind of joining a Slum Village track. I thought it was really, really dope. Illa J sounds amazing. Great production. And second really solid release from this posthumous album after Nutmeg and Nutmeg Part 2 with Redman and Busta Rhymes. The other was Doom had many verses on Czarface's new album. And I listened to the whole thing yesterday, really, really enjoyed it. I thought Doom had some real standout moments too. But it got me thinking about posthumous releases generally. I've been the type who like I've never listened to any of the Tupac albums that were created after his death. I think that the artist being there, choosing the track, like feeling the track, is a critical part of putting it together. And so, and then a lot of times, there's a lot of stuff where it's like unfinished stuff, and they've got features from other people on it to finish it out. And to me, it seems like there might have been a lot of stuff that the artist would have never released because it wasn't like their thing. Like I don't listen to these posthumous Prince releases either because he chose not to release them for a reason. And so I've never been a fan of the posthumous releases unless it was something that the artist put together and was going to release. So, but how do you feel about posthumous releases? Because I know you listen to a lot of the Pac stuff.
I do. I mean, Pac is, as I always go on record, is my favorite MC, and the reason why I talk to you every week, and the reason we've got so much history together. And it's funny too because a lot of those releases were really contaminated. Early in his passing, Pac's mom, bless her soul, really wanted to do away with the negativity, and the music that Tupac Shakur recorded throughout 1996 was very, vitriolic. So, the album Still I Rise with the Outlaws, there's edits throughout that album and re-recorded verses from other, from the Outlaws and guests that kind of changed the whole narrative. And I'm a believer of, you can produce around something, but there's a certain limit. And with Pac as well, you had Suge Knight, who throughout the years would push, death row artists that I don't feel were worthy of Tupac moments into the songs as features. And he would use death row producers to redo the beats, and that changes things. But there are great moments in there. I know it's cliche, but I look at a song like Changes, um, which I believe the Trackmasters did, and to me, that's iconic. And it came out in what, 98 on the Greatest Hits album, but it's an incredible Tupac song. I'm sure if you pulled people on the street, that's the first song that they think of if they're a casual fan. But it worked. It got Tupac's greatness out there. One of my favorite Pac records of all time is Until the End of Time, which took the same Changes formula of using an 80s pop sample. He did Take These Broken Wings, and they just did it beautifully. So I listen to posthumous music from John Lennon, a whole host of artists, and I think there's times where hip hop got it really right. Two examples I'll give you outside of Pac are Big L's The Big Picture, which, from what I understand, was, well over, 60-70% done when L was murdered and or killed. And they brought it home, and they did it with a lot of integrity. They used people that L admired or would work with. It wasn't like Rockets just threw, folks on the track as a promotional vehicle. And the other one is Jay Dilla's The Shining. I mean, Donuts dropped the same week Dilla passed, but within the next year, The Shining came out, and some of Jay Dilla's best productions and greatest visions come to life on that album. And I would much rather listen to those albums with that context than not. And I've always been a little bit perplexed with you avoiding Pac that way, avoiding those posthumous albums, because some of them are pretty good. And I think you've listened to Biggie's Born Again more times than I have.
Yeah, so no, probably not. I mean,
Really?
I love Dead Wrong because Biggie just like he snaps on that. But aside from that, I can't even name another song off
Yeah.
the album. I think there's a song with Redman and Matt, something like that. But oh yeah, there's one other joint on that I like. Yeah, I think it's Red and Matt.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Changes makes me cringe, man. And
Hmm.
the other joint, Broken Wings, it sounds good sonically, but I just can't see Pac in the studio choosing to rap on those songs. And so to me, it seems like a violation, like it's going against his artistic sensibility. And that to me is like a money grab and not something that like I can co-sign for artists that I care so much about, and their legacy. So it's really difficult for me. The Dilla things are songs that he created himself, and so unless someone was going in and like remixing it or whatever, then that to me is a pure like statement of his art. Same thing with the Gangstar album. That was premiere, and even though he's taking Guru verses that were created for other projects, because of the way they worked and because he of their partnership for I don't know like almost 20 years, like he knew um, what Guru liked, his sound, and he was a key stakeholder in the group. It's not like some other random producer was coming in and making the music. That to me felt good, and you could hear it with the song they did with Cole. Like it sounded like it was recorded, like real time with Guru. Like that to me is different, and so um, it made me think: what are some of the best posthumous releases? For me, and this we disagree on this too, but like I take the term at its literal meaning, after death. And so I think of Life After Death. Biggie like is probably the greatest of all time. Obviously was recorded as a full body of work before he died and released just shortly afterwards, but as a release after death, I can't think of any better. I think Machiavelli is a close second. That album is unbelievably great. Similar circumstances. I would put that Gangstar album up there. I think because of the way that Preem handled that and the care and attention that he gave to it. Um, I can't think of others though that would fit that fit that that level for me. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I disagree with you on especially Life After Death. I just think it was a turned in album, and it was, eerily prophetic to its title and messaging and everything else. But I understand where you're coming from. Machiavelli, sure. And those albums kind of live in tandem that way of like we're still getting great music from these icons that died 6 months apart. I do put Big L's, the big picture on that list. I put Jay Dilla's The Shining. For me, there's two albums that Tupac came out with that I think are meaningful. Until the End of Time is one of them. There's people out there that like Are You Still Down, which was a lot of demo recordings before his time at Death Row, and Afeni Shakur brought in like Warren G, and that's where you had the What Would You Do for Love with John B, with the Bobby Caldwell sample, and or Do for Love. And to me, that, even though they're different spectrums of 80s pop, I started to accept the fact that I think Pac would have taken 80s records and redone them, especially that was what was going on from the Fugees to Bad Boy to Death Row throughout the time of his passing. But the two albums that I hang my hat on are Until the End of Time, the double disc, which just had a lot of music come in. I don't love the production, but I love the lyrical content. And then Pac's Life, which came out in 2006. And you had, I think Sha Money XL oversaw that one. It had nothing to do with Death Row, but like Swizz Beats came in and really contemporized Tupac. It was like the last scrape of the barrel of what was left in the vaults. And I guess there's still more out there, but they put Nipsey on it. I believe they put like, T.I., they put contemporary artists on it that kind of fit with what Pac stood for. And I thought it was done really well. And I thought the production was done really well. Yeah. And then the other one I'll give it just a shout out to is Imperious Rex. We've had a ton of Sean Price music since his passing in 2015. And Sean was very prolific, but I thought Duck Down, and Sean's wife Bernadette did a really good job with that album in particular of just bringing it down the home stretch and making it sound authentic and good and new.
Yeah, I agree with you on Imperious Rex, and that's one where I question whether or not those were actually songs that P completed before, and they're just being released afterwards.
Mm,
That to me is kind of like the critical distinction. If the artists have full input into it and it just happens to be released afterwards, which is why I do count Life After Death, then I'm good with it. But if the artist doesn't have input and there's no one there who like would truly know what that artist thinks, like Primo with Guru, then to me it's just
yeah.
it's just patchwork. So
Yeah,
um,
and there's always biases. I think it's the new normal, though. I mean, we've spent a lot of time this year talking about what DMX's album will sound like, and it's all indications, all sources indicate that it's coming out in the very next few months. Um, I'm curious with it, and catalog is the lifeblood of an artist's family. So anyone that passes, I expect, and how easy it is now to release music. You don't need a label. You don't need to go through manufacturing. Um, every artist, I assume, so much catalog will be available for public consumption. And that's the other thing too. Just Biggie's Born Again had his song with Sadat X. I forget the title of it, that never made Ready to Die. These are opportunities too for demo recordings that can be really good and meaningful in their own right, but it's hard then to process them as albums for the reasons you just said.
well, but that DMX one was done. Supposedly
Yeah.
it's done and turned in. So do you not count that?
No, I mean, I think you do, and I'll be shocked if we only get one DMX album.
So if you count that, why don't you count Life After Death? Because then it's just a timing issue. Like suppose Life After Death they just released 6 months later.
I'll
You
be
count it then?
I'll be really curious to know if with this DMX album, if behind the scenes Rough Riders and Def Jam don't use this opportunity to add to that album. If it's done, if it's sealed, if it's lock and key, this is the album that X wanted. I put that in the class of Life After Death. I was surprised to know that it's coming out so soon, but maybe that speaks to that. Maybe it's we're just going to leave this album as X wanted it. Didn't that? I think that's kind of what happened with Pop Smoke, right?
Yeah, yeah, it happened with Pop Smoke, and I wonder with Fife, like, I wonder if this is all music because my understanding is Nutshell was done, like
Yeah.
that was his. The Illa J song to me, again, because of the Slum Village like sounded to me like it was something that was done after, just with Fife vocals. But
Yeah, I wondered that too. To me, I
yeah,
kind of hoped, and I love the song. I actually prefer it to the other two. But I had hoped that, on Fife's debut solo album, The Anticipation, he worked with Dilla, High Tech, Pete Rock. I hope that this was him finding a producer that made a Dilla bop and paying tribute by putting, Dilla's brother on the song.
yeah,
But yeah, we may never know. And I love to read those interviews. When Doom dropped this album with Czarface this week, my first question is, when was this recorded? Because they had made another album in 2018. And I found out that, these sessions were from, according to Pitchfork, April of, 2020.
oh wow,
So it was
yeah,
a thought out project. And it is. I mean, you came into this moment speaking about it. Doom is not on every song. I'm not sure that he was on every song on the previous album. I know Ghostface with Czarface wasn't on every record. So these are kind of like Jay Electronica, Jay-Z. But you put two of them on the playlist, and I think those are absolutely two of the best.
yeah, word. So anything else noteworthy this week caught your attention?
Looks like Warren G's son Elijah, I hope I'm saying that correctly, got drafted by the Buffalo Bills. I thought that's cool. I just love, hip hop intersections with sports. And for anybody, I can't remember. Do you remember if it was the show or Rhyme and Reason where they show Warren G going to every Raiders game? I know he is as devout a football fan as anybody in hip hop.
I can't remember, but yeah,
Yeah.
that's dope though. Yeah,
Diehard Raiders fan. So that's cool. And I also thought of, Maceo's son Trey from De La Soul, was in the league. I just like to see that. Those were kind of it, apart from a few music drops. What about you?
yeah. On the music side, on a non-hip hop tip, Anthony Hamilton just released a song called "You Made a Fool of Me," and I think it's some of his best work in quite a few years. I've been a fan of his since he first dropped. And this is like vintage Anthony Hamilton.
Really?
Yeah, yeah, it really some feel good soul music. Obviously it's about heartbreak and everything, but I love seeing artists of his caliber putting out great music, 12, 15 years into their career. And he's done that with this one. So
I'm
definitely
a I'm an
check that
Anthony
out.
Hamilton fan. I haven't checked it out, but as we talk about Sean Price, I interviewed Anthony a few times over the years. And if I'm not mistaken, like one of his first credits was on like it was either Helter Skelter or a boot camp click project. So it's funny that Anthony kind of came in the game. You would never make that association, but always been a cool guy. I'm eager to drop a needle on that one.
Yeah, yeah. And
Um,
you said
oh, go
Marcus
ahead.
Machado is like,
Yeah, I mean that's been out for a few weeks. I listened to it this week, and Marcus is an extremely talented guitarist. You've gotten to see him live. I have not. Right?
yeah. So Amanda Mester, aka Bonita for AFH, and I went to see Marcus. We actually went to see Anderson Paak at SOBs, and we had a table that was right at the front of the stage. And Marcus opened up for Anderson Paak. I'd never heard of him before, and he's playing, and Amanda and I are both looking at each other like, what planet is this dude from? Because
Yeah.
he is like Jimi Hendrix level, and his like he's like a prodigy, just unbelievably great, and like song after song after song, he was just hitting us over the head. So huge fan of Marcus, really huge fan. He's played with Pete Rock and Pharaoh in both
Yeah.
their bands, so very got a lot of hip hop credibility there too, but super super dope.
Yeah, so he dropped an album called Aquarius Purple, and I played it this week. I mean, it's just that heavy, soul. Obviously, like there's an homage to Prince and Prince's kind of more guitar grooves, even in its title and some of the tracks. And it also reminded me a lot of like those really heady funkadelic jams. So I've just enjoyed that, and especially given his intersections, like you said, with the Soul Survivors and 13, been on that. And the other song that I really want to kind of shout out is we talk about Doom and Aesop Rock and Homeboy Sandman. They have a group called Lice, if I'm not mistaken, and they paid a tribute to Doom with a song called Ask Anyone. And we talk about posthumous albums. I am not the biggest fan of tribute songs. I think there's great ones. I'll Be Missing You for Biggie. I thought DITC on their album closed it out with a really special one for Big L. But this joint, you know, Aesop talks about just how profoundly Doom influenced him. And let's not forget, I mean, these guys worked together with Prefuse 73 on a song we covered, you know, as a Do Remember on AFH. And in the verse, you know, Aesop just talks about hearing kind of Doom's comeback from Zev Love X live on Stretch and Bobbito as he was in Blockhead's apartment. And he talks about growing up. I think Aesop has ties to Long Island, and Doom had rapped about sneakers hanging on telephone wires. And Aesop said he would drive around Doom's neighborhood and see, you know, sneakers hanging on the lines and wonder if those were the ones that Doom was rapping about, only to find out that was not the case. And then you have Homeboy Sandman, who I really believe, you know, in terms of creativity, you know, compound rhymes, interesting concepts, kind of rapping from an everyman's perspective. I definitely think, you know, he is in the Doom family tree. I mean, I would credit Doom as probably being one of his top MC influences, along with Mos Def, and he's a great guest on it. I just really enjoyed the song. Rhyme Sayers, who worked with Doom, put it out, and all proceeds, downloads and streams go to Doom's family, which you love to see. And you added it to the playlist, which I really appreciate. And you know, I'm kind of coming back at a time of reconsidering Aesop Rock. He was never my favorite in the Def Jux movement, but as I listen to Open Mike Eagles, you know, Then What Had Happened podcast with LP, I'm going back to a lot of these releases and just appreciating them more than I ever had, especially with Aesop Rock and Mr. Lift. So
Yeah, I thought that was a dope song. You know, we kind of like on the opposite ends of the spectrum. Not surprisingly, there. You know, I've never been the biggest Homeboy Sandman fan. I know that he's been a real key artist for you, and so this kind of like really brought him like more to the fore for me, and like made me appreciate him more. With Aesop Rock, though, I really love him, and his Skeleton album back in 2012, I put as one of AFH's top albums of the year. I love the Zero Dark 30 song, and just like really conceptual artist, both lyrically and visually. So, really been a big fan of his. So, like, really cool to see the two of them work together.
yeah, absolutely. And that actually is my song of the week, which I never would have guessed. But I keep playing it. It articulates, you know, at an artistic level why Doom is so impactful to hip hop, and certainly to me, as you and I, you know, spent a couple of hours early this year just paying tribute with both of our Doom kind of reflections.
Word. And mine is Mando Calrissian from that Czarface album. You know, I
Mm.
think, you know, that's Doom sounding just great. It's really, it's kind of an upbeat song for Czarface. And yeah, that one just kind of struck me. So.
It's interesting how that group has evolved, man. Like, you know, I never in a million years would have thought we'd get two projects between Inspector Deck and Doom and never get Ghost Starks. So I don't believe, as we talk about posthumous albums, I don't believe this is the last music we'll hear from Doom. I sense that he was up to something with Rhyme Sayers, and you and I spoke about, you know, we know there were other recordings to Madlib beats for a possible, you know, Mad Villainy too. And you know, but shout out to Czarface and yeah, man, I'm eager to see what comes.
Word. Well, always a pleasure. I look forward to buying you that drink. Actually, you might just you might have just like erased your deficit a little bit, but at least no more
Yeah.
egg on my face for a minute. So
Yeah, man. Until the next great bet, until the next great podcast, man. Here's to another dope week in music.
yeah, man. Same here. All right, later.
All right, peace.
See you.